Thanks for joining and
My
hopping on for
pleasure.
this call. Yeah,
Thanks for inviting me.
yeah, my pleasure. Um, as a quick intro to everyone, I have Evan Horowitz here. He's the CEO and co-founder of Movers and Shakers, an agency that you've probably seen in the news blowing up and really revolutionizing content creation and influencer marketing on TikTok. So yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for being here. Yeah.
Pleasure. Love working with you guys.
And I've always felt like a big cheerleader for your company. I've loved seeing it grow over the past few years, and since we started working together. And I think you have a really awesome and interesting origin story. Would love for you just to share it, with the community online here.
Sure. Yeah. It's actually a family business. I started with my husband. Was not like planned. We didn't like sit together and put together a business plan. It sort of started randomly. So I've always been a marketer. I've worked in-house at some big brands like Samsung and Macy's. And my husband is a Broadway performer and director. When we met, he was actually performing in Mary Poppins on Broadway. And what happened was he was creating these videos of different musical stories that he would put together, dance on film, mini musical film. He posts them on his own social just to get the word out about him as an artist. And every time he put a video online, it would just go mini viral, like totally organically, because the way he tells these stories with music, dancing, it's like so engaging. You can't help but smile. People are commenting on his Facebook like, "Oh my God, this made my day. Thanks so much for sharing this." And then they shared it with their friends. So I'm watching that as a marketer and just thinking like, "Oh my God, like videos that are actually cutting through the clutter, that's so cool." And I said to him like, "You could probably like do those for brands," but he didn't really know what that would look like. So we were like, "All right, well, let's team up." And so that's where we started Movers and Shakers, really with this idea of using original music, movement, dancing to tell brand stories in a really fresh way that would cut through the clutter and actually drive engagement.
What was really awesome too is when we first connected. I loved what you guys were working on, and what's really important to note is this was all really pre TikTok becoming
Yeah,
TikTok from a. Well, I think actually it was musically back then, and so it was early days, and the focus was on just other platforms too, whether it be like YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or what
right.
have you, just creating great original content, original songs for brands, which was awesome. But we'd kind of love to hear a bit about how TikTok transformed
Yeah,
your business. I felt like you were at the right place at the right time with the right idea.
I think so. Yeah. No, like you said, when we started in 2016, and our focus was really content creation for YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. We love like long form video storytelling. We have many projects where we did like a 3 minute, like Match.com, we made a 3 minute mini musical love story that ran as a skip after 5 second YouTube ad and got over 2 minutes of average watch time. We love that sort of like going against the common wisdom that no one has any attention span. And we find that if you have a good story and you can draw them in, like they'll absolutely stick around to watch. When TikTok happened, it was, it's interesting. Funny story actually. So I reconnected with one of my high school friends at our 20th reunion, and that was last summer. She happens to be the VP of brand marketing at Elf Cosmetics, and she loved, similar to what you said, she was totally taken by the whole movers and shakers approach. And she's like, "We need to figure out how to work together. This is so awesome." And Elf was testing TikTok at the time. They wanted to lean in a big way. And, I'm looking at TikTok, music, dancing, it's like such a huge part of the platform. And they're like, "Well, we need help from people who understand this." So they brought us in. And, fast forward this campaign that we created together that launched last October, hashtag Guys Lips Face, it still holds the record for the most viral campaign in TikTok US history. So um, pretty epic. And, I guess the end of the story is as a result of that, we've just been doing so much TikTok ever since last fall and doing, helping so many brands understand, enter the platform, continue to innovate. That our whole TikTok division is just blown up. And yeah, we're now, especially during quarantine, TikTok is even bigger. So that's a huge part of our focus right now.
I mean, one of my favorite parts about that platform is it's kind of like this. I guess people don't realize, but it's really a collaborative community. And you know, early days of just being on the platform, you'd see someone create a video with a song, they do some sort of unique take with that song, and then you'd kind of see people just riff off of that, parody it, evolve it, and then all of a sudden you have something, you know, completely new. Like one of my favorite examples, you know, there's a creator who has I forget the type of lizard it is, but it's a lizard of some sort. Margot, you know Margot, it's like a gecko or something like that. But she created a song about, like, you know, just singing to the camera on TikTok about her lizard. And I'll probably get a bunch of comments saying it's not a lizard, it's this, you know, but whatever. And you know, and then you go on Spotify, and then someone riffed off of that on Spotify and actually created a whole song around, like, riffing off of that. And so, and then you see you know, people creating art around it on TikTok and sharing through. So it was always very interesting for me to kind of see how it, like, you have one small thing happen, one small idea just kind of blow up and ripple throughout, which I've never seen really on social, that sort of direct collaboration that happens.
Yeah. I think TikTok has really unleashed creativity in a new way. It's just amazing how it's really made creativity and creative expression more accessible, I think, to people, because, you know, Instagram, like, you almost feel like you need to be above a certain threshold of like how cool this picture is and how amazing your life is in order to post. And TikTok just came and be like, yeah, just rock out in your bedroom. You don't have to be good, you know, and just post that and people will like it. And that's just unleashed just a massive amount of creativity and, like you said, riffing on each other's ideas. And it's just a really fun world to work in.
And you know, with on the UGC front, can you talk a little bit about like how you incorporate that into your strategies, or when you're creating you know, original songs, or any sort of brand strategies? How do you look at that UGC component?
Yeah, I mean, it's the UGC and this opportunity for mass virality that has all the marketers salivating, right? Because we're like, oh, like the scale is unprecedented. Movers and Shakers just passed 20 billion views in our campaigns cumulatively on TikTok. This billion with a B, right? Which is just like, what? Like, that doesn't even make sense anywhere else.
Billion, like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah.
It's awesome.
So yeah, so UGC, you know, a lot of brands that come to us, they want to go viral. They want that viral moment. And there's a whole art and science, obviously, that we've been developing around how to create that. Like you said, music is a big part of that. We write music for a lot of big challenges. And when we're doing that, we're architecting that music for virality, not just how we've always done it. Like anything that we wrote for YouTube or Instagram, of course, like, we want that to also get stuck in your head and be catchy and have that kind of stickiness. But there's a whole new layer on TikTok, which is kind of to your point of spawning that ricochet effect where people see it and they want to join in. So how do you write music that is really inviting for you to make it your own? You know, there's this balance of the music should tee up like what the challenge is very specifically, so you get it, like, oh, do this thing with your eyes, do this thing with your lips, but then also leave enough room for creativity so that I want to do it, I want to add my spin on it, you know. And that's a lot of the thought process they're going through when we plan out that seemingly simple 15 seconds of music.
When you were talking, it reminded me of kind of when we were first starting out. We'd figure out, okay, how do we really balance out the influencers or the creator's voice with the brand? And it was this whole balancing act when we were building up these creative briefs to say, okay, how do we make sure we're checking off all the boxes for the brand, right? So they're like, okay, you know, when they're running their reports and they're going through, it's consistent with their overall goal message. But make sure that the creator can go in and say, okay, like, how do I make this special for my audience?
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about the songs, it was almost what it really reminded me of is, it's almost like you create the songs like a creative brief. It's almost like an audio, you know, more implicit creative brief for and not just for creators, but for anyone on the platform.
It's so true. Yeah. I mean, it really is, because often the music is really what carries, like the consistent through line through a TikTok trend is the music. So that's what is inspiring people to participate and telling them what to do.
I guess like kind of switching gears a little bit and talking about the entrepreneur side.
Sure.
Uh, you started the business with your husband 3 years ago, and I feel like those are always the rockiest years. The first 3 years of any
Yeah.
business, getting it off the ground. Can you just share a bit about that experience and a little bit of? I know you talked about the growth story a little bit, but anything to add for the entrepreneurs listening in?
Um, I mean, it's crazy now. Like in the last 9 months, it's very affirming from, the first few years, which is, there was a lot of really hard times. Cause I think everyone who started a company, like it's not like there's dry spells. There's times when you're like, should I just throw in the towel? And we went through a lot of those. And then now like this week, I have so many interviews with press that like, it's amazing, like we finally broke through this thing. We're growing so fast. But I think that persistence and commitment to just like keep trying towards the vision, I mean, that's really what's carried us this far. It would have been easy, I think, to give up or say, well, didn't take off initially like with the rate that we had hoped. But I guess, what I would encourage everyone to do, and I'm sure this is similar in your experience, like just if you want to be successful, you have to keep the faith and keep committed even during those hard times.
Sure. I felt like, I mean, for me and for us as like a team, we were all pretty young, straight out of college when we started the company. So it was very much sort of like, you know, no really, not really a lot of work experience, right? Other than like some jobs throughout college. And then, then diving into running a business. And one of my first realizations was I should have probably spent more time paying attention during my accounting classes.
Yeah,
But
it's surprisingly important as a business owner.
yeah, it definitely is. I was thinking like, I thought this was arbitrary. I thought the debits and credit stuff was just something you kind of punt over to your accounting team and leave it at that. And then you kind of realize, well, no, understanding a balance sheet and understanding the relationship between that and the P&L and the cash flow statement. It's almost like how a doctor uses pulse and blood pressure and oxygen level to diagnose the patient. It's like those are essentially your diagnostics for looking at the health of the business. So, but yeah, definitely. If you, I guess back then, recent success aside, like if you knew what starting your business, what the next 3 years would look like, do you feel like you would have done it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always loved this business. I think, our mission as a company is to spread joy, and I love that. Like, I'm super behind that. I'm always proud of the work that we put out there. So even when it was harder and all the work that we were doing, I was still like super proud of that. And now it's like super exciting. But it's been challenging. I mean, I work a lot. Like it's gotten harder in some sense now that like we have so much momentum because I want to capitalize on that. So I'm like leaning into that. And the reason that the growth has been so exponential is not just because like one campaign and then it just was easy. It was like because we've leaned in and like really hustled to like spark, that's to make that spark into a big fire. But yeah, like I love the work that we do, and I like putting that positive energy out into the world. So I definitely would do it again.
Yeah, I always ask myself, like, I'm very happy that I didn't know all the headaches I'd go through in the first few years of starting a business when I did,
Yeah,
because that might have caused some pause. But yeah, I think
yeah,
as entrepreneurs, you dive in and you're passionate about it. And I think something you touched on too that's really interesting is like people think once you start making it, it's like kind of like, okay, I could relax now. But it's like,
yeah,
no, you actually end up going from working at 110% to 130, 140, 150% because you want to make sure you're capitalizing on every single
right,
opportunity that you can. Because and on top of it, you appreciate that opportunity because you were working through it when
Totally.
when it was challenging.
That's so true. I think appreciating the opportunity, like, my husband and I are constantly just taking a moment and be like, whoa, this is happening, like that's amazing. But then that makes me also want to stay up till 2 a.m. and like, really like do everything I can to capitalize on it because we are so lucky. And, it's a moment in time. Like I'm very aware that TikTok by 2021, it's going to be mainstream. So like, we're not going to be so differentiated. I want to make sure that we continue to stay way ahead of the curve, but that requires really leaning in, and it's a lot.
Especially now too, because this is like at the point where others like, oh, they're, movers and shakers is having some success there. How do we, get in on that? So it's like,
Right.
now's the time where you have to double down while, some of the bigger agencies or other players are like kind of thinking like, oh, okay, they found a vein and they're
Right.
mining it. Like how, do we get in on it too? So
Right. Totally. No, but it's fun and it's exciting, and like I love the team that we're building. I get to spend time on TikTok for work, so that's good.
that's probably the best part.
Yeah.
It's guilt-free TikTok viewing.
Yeah, kind of. It's still a rabbit hole I get sucked into.
It's funny because sometimes like, okay, I'm gonna go on for like a minute, and then it's like an hour later. I'm like, why am I still scrolling through videos?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Kind of as some like last notes, like any high level advice to brands looking to get on TikTok that haven't yet, or sort of just high level piece of advice for brands that have recently got onto TikTok, just anything along those lines.
Sure. I mean, I think high level, same thing that, Open Influence is telling everybody. It's like you have to understand the platform and how different it is from the other place. Like Instagram and TikTok in some senses are polar opposites. So the brands that are just kind of like, oh, let me just copy paste Instagram strategy onto TikTok, like you just look super awkward, So understanding the way that the TikTok conversation happens, not just the visual aesthetic, which is obviously totally different, but the tonality, the storytelling, like you really want to start to understand that so that your brand can enter in a really native way. And that's what will have it spark virality.
A lot of brands definitely do look at it as like a one size fits all approach. And it, on one hand, it's easy to, it's convenient, but on the other hand, to your point, it's like you're not taking advantage of those platforms and what they offer. And at the end of the day, it's all about the experience of the people interacting with that content.
Right. Yeah. What are you saying? What's your big takeaway for TikTok?
Yeah, I would say it's pretty similar. I mean, the big take is one, just using Instagram as the sort of parallel, because I think people draw that parallel the most. To your point, is it's not nearly as curated of an experience. The storytelling is completely different. I mean, even within Instagram, between in feed and and stories, they're almost two different experiences and two different ways of working. But TikTok, you have to really think about the UGC component and how that fits in. And that's where you have to also be willing as a brand to just be a lot more raw and have a lot more fun, as opposed to, some brands will go with like the Instagram flat lay is like, hey, yeah, let's just do this and call it a day. Or let's just do this simple testimonial. It's like, and if you're doing a testimonial on TikTok, you're going to get skewered. Or, assuming you even make it past, the
probably
algorithm.
no one will even see your video.
Probably no one will see it. People that do will be like, you wasted my time. So, I would say the big takeaway, I think, with content in general is make sure you're creating value. As brands, the way I really look at it is people are interacting with your content before they're interacting with your products. Like your content is really what you're selling at first, and it's really what gets people through the door. And if people don't like the content and the story you're telling, then they're not really going to care for your product per se. And so, making sure that you really understand it kind of goes back to that communication model of looking at the message, the messenger, and then the audience. Like, you need to make sure those things align for it to resonate. And so, and in this case, the medium and the messenger, would be a TikTok and a creator respectively. And so understanding how you can mold what your message is really, really key.
Yeah.
And I think what you're doing with music is just so exciting. And I think it's something so novel for brands where they need to understand, like, if you really want to embrace the platform, embrace the music element, because that's what it's about. Don't just rip off something else, or don't just half-ass it. Like, really, create something new and unique.
Yeah, the music is key. I mean, music is like the new hashtag on TikTok. So much of TikTok, there are no hashtags, and it's just music is the thing that's the trending through line. So I think it's really important to understand, like, why music is trending, which songs are trending, how you can integrate that into telling your brand story. And when you do, you get a big boost, both in terms of visibility for it as well as cool factor.
Like, I've just loved, kind of throughout the course of just being on TikTok, just seeing how certain songs gain in popularity, others fade, new ones emerge. That's been just so exciting to see. And I think, it's really key if you're going to play.
Totally. No, it's it's very fad driven, like everything else on TikTok. But it's funny because we work a lot with the music industry, and they're obviously very focused on TikTok because this is now one of the huge ways to make songs hit. I mean, when we had our original brand song, the Eyes Lips Face song, hit #4 on Spotify's global viral chart, everyone in the music business is like, what? Like, where did that come from? And the artist that we worked with, that was his first song that he had published under his own name. And like, that was amazing, his career is on a whole new level. So there's a lot of attention, and it's cool because we get to collaborate with a lot of record labels and musicians who are looking to make their stars rise. And it creates cool synergies with brands where we can do a branded campaign with a really cool emerging artist that, it rises. What is it? The rising tide rises all boats. It's neat to be able to propel everybody forward.
Too, like, what was for me a really interesting experience. I remember early on when creators started featuring just songs in their videos, and the labels were sending cease and desists left and right, like, hey, don't use that in your video. And then it's kind of like, I think a light bulb went off at one point with someone on one of those legal teams. Was like, wait, if we're making most of our money, or a big chunk of our money, I should say, is coming from streaming, and when people post, the streams go up. Maybe instead of discouraging people from posting with our music, we should actually be encouraging them to do it.
That's funny. It was funny because with the Eyes Lips Face story, we only wrote 15 seconds of music for the challenge originally. But like you're saying, people started posting on their comments in TikTok, like, hey, I can't find the music in Spotify. Like, why can't I find this song? Because exactly what you're saying, like, the people seeing it in social absolutely carries over to, the real world. And so we hustled and we turned around the full song within a week. It was launched on Spotify and iTunes, and then it just started to blow up there. Because there's a big crossover. We find that especially the TikTok and Spotify audiences, there's a lot of overlap there.
Because most of the time it goes the other way, right? You go from a full song to a sample.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really unique case study, because you actually went from a 15-second sample to a full song, where it's like, okay, well, and that kind of triggers the idea of kind of like the startup way of doing it, right? You start out with like an MVP product. You start out with like, here's a low fidelity test. Oh, well, people like it. Now let's go build the actual product, or build the actual app.
That's how we do it when we create branded music, actually, because when we're working with a brand, we'll usually create 5 or 6 different musical demos. We'll actually work with once we figure out what the brief is, we'll we'll work with a bunch of different songwriters and we'll create different MVPs, so to speak. And then we'll present those to the brand team, and they'll actually get a choice of like all these different options. And then we iterate, and then we extend it to the full song. But yeah, it always does start with like a snippet.
Thanks for hopping on the call. It's been awesome catching up as always.
Likewise, Eric. Congrats on your success. And yeah, it's amazing to just keep pushing and innovating and in crazy economic situations. So.
It's definitely been a crazy few months, but it's it's been interesting too, I think, to see how the world has come together. And I've actually personally been happily surprised at just how positive a lot of people have been, and how supportive people have been throughout these times, which has been great.
Yeah, totally. And social media is more important than ever, which is interesting.
It's on everything. I love following all the success, and I feel like it's moving faster and faster every day. So congrats! It's been awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. If anybody's looking to follow along and learn the TikTok strategies that we're using, I post a lot on my LinkedIn, so you can follow me there.
That in the post too.
Yeah. And I guess shout out to Movers and Shakers, moversshakers.co is our website. Yeah, reach out.
You'll be wowed instantly, like I was, just following everything they've been working on.